Self-improvement can be a very lonely journey. Hi, this is Andile Q, and welcome to Q's Gig Chronicles. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a period in my musical career where I had to make some difficult decisions about the type of career I wanted to have as a musician. And these decisions had to do with what is required to be a certain type of musician. Just to give you a quick background of how I learned, I'm mostly self-taught. We were supposed to learn at a certain church. There was a guy tasked with teaching us, but there was just too many of us to teach at the same time. So how I quickly learned was every time we were done with a practice session, I would volunteer to pack up the keyboard because nobody wanted to do that. So as I was packing up the keyboard, obviously people will be saying their goodbyes and, final chats and all that. And I would take that opportunity, that 2, 5, 7 minutes, just to recap on what I might have heard that day or a week before or whenever. And that's how I started learning. And I realized that I had to have a really good ear to be able to remember the stuff that I had heard and be able to apply it on the keyboard days, even weeks later. And that's how I developed my ear, and kept on improving myself that way. Now, a few years later, I started realizing that the way I'm learning is very limited because the people that I was trying to learn from either were limiting me or they themselves were limited, so there was nothing more that they could offer. And then you would find the others that knew a lot, but obviously at that time nobody wanted to share their skills because once you share too much of your skills, everybody starts learning the shortcuts. There's always a good chance that they might be better than you, especially if you are the one who knows more. It's easier for you to pick up who the talented ones are and who the talented ones are not. And so I realized that I had to change the way I'm learning music. I cannot be hitting the roof every time. I needed to know more, and I knew that there was more. I just didn't know how to get that more. And as I grew up musically, I watched a lot of music videos and I enjoyed the behind the scenes, the documentaries, and I was intrigued by how many people were reading music. I had heard that there are people who read music. I just didn't realize there were people reading music while they were playing music because it's music. You just play it, you just hear it, and that fascinated me and that intrigued me to a point where I needed to know, what are these people reading? Why are they reading while they're playing music? They should just sit and play. And after months and probably a year of asking questions, I got to know that there were people around my circle that actually knew what was happening. And I asked them about it, and I realized I needed to go to a music school. And that's when things got weird, because these people that knew how to read, or supposedly knew how to read, didn't want me to know how to read. And that was very strange. I'm like, hey guys, you have been to the school, they teach music and blah blah blah. Can I go? Or how do I go? How much does it cost? And all of them just flat out refused to give more information. In fact, they discouraged me from attending such lessons because they said it would be a waste of my time and a waste of my money. And now I realized the school that they were talking about, a few years earlier in high school, they had visited my school and they asked all of us that wanted to learn music, it was mostly instruments, to submit their names and numbers. Then I realized that, after 2 years, these guys didn't call us. I just assumed that maybe they went elsewhere. I hope they didn't call the others and left me out. But anyway, I've always been that guy that just goes against the flow. So I just decided I'm going to go to this music school despite my friends discouraging me to. And as I got there, I quickly learned why my friends didn't want me to enroll at that school. Because at that stage, I could play a few chords. I could play a few notes at a time. And now at a music school, because I had to learn from scratch, and they were teaching with kids' books, I had to play Mary Had a Little Lamb and some weird songs. And the difficult part was I had to adjust to playing one finger at a time. And now remember, this is a guy who can play some chords. I didn't know what they were called. I didn't know how to construct those chords. I just knew how to play them because I can hear what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. And that transition was very, very difficult. And I had to make even more difficult decisions as to, do I continue in this path or do I change? And for some reason, I just decided to stick it out. The people teaching me, for me, they felt like they were very slow. They were not capturing the essence of why I'm here. I'm here to learn, but I already know something, so teach me more. But unfortunately, that's not how it works when it comes to formal music. You have to be taught the proper way to play. You have to be stripped out of whatever you think you might know and start learning the correct technique. And that was very frustrating for me. Fortunately for me, the senior instructor then noticed that I was musical and noticed that I was getting frustrated by this whole process. So she took me over and started teaching me, and and obviously she started playing, and oh man, like, oof, if I could only play like that. And that was the thing. That's what sold me on music tuition, that I want to play like she was playing because she was clean. She was very clean. Her technique was just spotless. She didn't break a sweat, and she was playing very difficult pieces. And I think she did it deliberately just to show me that people who can read can actually play as well. And I had to make the decision again to stay. And as I started practicing on my own, I realized that it was very difficult to focus on what I needed to know and what I already knew. And by that I mean that the music, the chords, the little that I knew how to play kept coming back every time I tried to practice. And I ended up doing more of the stuff that I already know instead of the stuff that I need to know, which was this new reading music idea. And that's when now that decision, that very, very, very difficult decision that I made. I didn't know how difficult it was. Then I just realized about 2 years later, and that created a very lonely 2 years in my musical career because I had to stop playing with bands, playing with music groups, playing for singers, playing at church and anywhere else I was playing because I was not improving. I just kept playing the stuff I already know, and I just keep hitting the ceiling every time. I was not learning anything. So I decided that I'm going to stop. And that was very difficult. And I realized that that might have insulted other people because when you decide to improve yourself, your current surroundings read it differently because obviously everybody thinks that they add value to your life, they add value to your career, and then you decide, you know what, I'm not getting what I need here. That can come off as offensive to a lot of people, and I think it did because it alienated me from a lot of musicians. I was not playing with any bands. I was not playing at any events, so I missed out. At some point, I didn't even know which events were happening, who was playing, who was singing. I just got to be very lonely musically. But I knew what I needed to do. I knew that I needed to keep practicing. I needed to learn these myriad of little lambs and playing one finger at a time, one hand at a time. I just knew that there was something to it. But the loneliness was real. Can imagine being one of the guys that everybody went to, about events. Hey, can we pick you up? Can we go to this event? Are you coming? Let's go. To nothing. I have no idea of what's happening. And that was really difficult for me. Because now, as much as I was learning and improving, I was very lonely musically. I had friends and all that, but musical acquaintances, because I was moving in a different direction than anybody else, that made it very difficult for me. But it was worth it. Well, obviously, I later learned that, but during that time, it just didn't make sense. But I realized also that the path that I took actually had a lot of benefits because I knew now there were a lot more people that can play way better than I thought people could play. And I knew that there were different levels of playing, and I knew that there were resources that would help me play. I didn't have to rely on anybody else to teach me or to share their knowledge. I could just go open a book and learn. And that's what I did. I pushed myself to a point where I just got used to this loneliness. And I knew and understood that self improvement isolates you. And till today, I find that the path that I always take is very different from everybody else. Mind you, everybody else has got their own journeys, and obviously mine seems to be very strange to me at times as well, because I don't understand why I always push myself so hard. But then when I play, and especially when I review my videos later on, days later, months later, years later, I'm like, oh, that's why you have improved. You have really suffered through that because you were very isolated, you were not aware of the latest trends in music, but you have improved. So, as much as it was very lonely, and it is, I mean, anything that's worth doing that needs a lot of practice, it needs a lot of personal time, it needs a lot of alone time, but it is worth it. And I keep doing it because I've gotten so used to that practicing on my own. I still practice even if there are no gigs coming, there are no concerts, there's nothing happening. I still keep practicing. Till next time.